Hi and welcome to the Cobot channel. This is the UK channel for Universal Robots. We're going to bring you the latest in technical innovations, talk about UR Plus products and how they can be set up easily. And each week we'll have an interesting guest who will interview on the world of robotics.
Hello, I'm David Leaser from Universal Robots. Today I'm going to answer one of the most common questions that we get asked is how to interface to machines using digital I/O. So how we interface to machines or safety signals is through the safety control board. So this is an image of the board blown up. So if we look from the left going to the right, anything that's yellow and red is dedicated safety, so it can't be configured. So of course it's emergency stop or safeguard stop. Then we have our remote power terminals. This is if we wanted to remove the teach pendant and power the button. Then we could take a signal from a PLC or a switch. We then have our high-speed inputs, which we would use typically for conveyor tracking. So we take the encoder ports for conveyor tracking. Then we have our configurable safety. So these are yellow and black. So this is where we can configure those to be what we want them to be in safety. Then we have our standard digital I/O. So we have 8 inputs and 8 outputs. And then we can configure these to switch a machine on, open a door, etc. And then we also have analog inputs where we could actually interface to a sensor on 4 to 20 milliamps or something like that. So here we have the actual safety control board, and these are the interface signals that we've got in our training center. So we have some additional safety circuits wired in for additional e-stops or safeguard stops, so we can mimic that. And then we have our I/O wired into our inputs and outputs for controlling the conveyor and receiving the signals from the photocells. And then we have our analog signals wired in for our potentiometer. Okay, so now we've interfaced those signals and we've renamed them. We can actually play the program and see how that interacts. We've got conveyor out feed, conveyor in feed. So the robot's obviously controlling the conveyor via a thread, so it moves to and fro. And then if we just stop the robot, so now I will use digital input 0, which is my free drive. Click that. Now the robot's in free drive. You can take it out of free drive. Now the robot's not in free drive. So here we can see the I/O screen of the teach pendant. So when the application's running, we can see the inputs and the outputs actually live. So you can use this for fault finding to make sure a signal's coming in if you're expecting to receive it. So that's the end of this week's Tech Talk on how to set up I/O. Next week we'll have a completely different topic to discuss.
Welcome to this week's Application Spotlight. This week it's all about using robots for machine tending. In the video, a UR10 robot is being used to load parts in and out of a Haas machine. The robot has a dual gripper. It reaches in, takes out the finished part from the chuck, blows out the swarf and the cutting fluid, and then inserts the raw part. The robot will exit from the machine, and on the wrist of the robot there is a small button that forms a thumb. It'll press the start button and that will start the machine. It'll exit and then drop the finished part into a tote and go to the loading table to pick up the next raw part. Hi, welcome back to the Cobot channel. Today I'm joined by Dr. Tom Helliwell from a company called Razor. Hi Tom.
Hi Mark, it's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me down.
No problem. Can you tell us a little bit about Razor and what you do?
So Razor is a technology consultancy. We primarily do custom software development, platform development, data-oriented projects and strategic roadmaps for businesses, and particularly manufacturing today. We're getting a lot of interest from manufacturers, so it's quite an exciting time.
Excellent, excellent. So we've got some kind of questions that we're going to discuss about how robotics is evolving and how we see things in manufacturing for the future. So what do you think is the main barrier to the wider use of robotics in the UK?
I think a lot of it comes down to perception at the moment. I think people think that robots are for very structured environments. I think now we're seeing with the Cobot trend that really they can be applied in many, many different areas. They've got a lot of really interesting applications. So yeah, I think there's a massive potential for people to become more aware of what the potential is for these sort of robots. and they can really be quite transformative for these businesses.
Yeah, I mean, we usually say that cobots aren't robots because there's a negative connotation around robots, but cobots have been designed to work alongside people, so it should be a bit better adopted, really. How do you think that robots can help fill the skills gap in manufacturing as well?
So I think cobots and robots, I think it's part of it changed the image of manufacturing as well. So I think a lot of people believe that manufacturing is dirty, sort of dark environment where there's a lot of hard work going on. I think robots and cobots and digital in general is a great way of changing the image, I think, of manufacturing and making it very interesting and exciting for young people and people from different industries start to look at the industry as a different place, and it's quite an exciting, growing place to work now with reshoring, the trends around automation and digital. I think it's getting quite an interesting place to work.
It's true, yeah, we're seeing the same thing. How can Razor help manufacturers on that pathway to automation? How can your company sort of help people and assist them?
So Razor's worked with a number of manufacturers now, but basically we work quite closely with the business owners or the board to try and figure out where the main challenges are with the business, and often it comes down to the operations and the way that the costing and the pricing, the customer modelling works. So we do a very broad brush approach with a lot of businesses, but it always comes down to a good roadmap, understanding where return on investment is, and we start to invest small amounts of money and start to build up the momentum really for digital transformation. So that's what it comes down to. But I like to remind people that it's not just about digital, it's really about making the business work better and the people happier and more profitability as well, get the basics right.
Exactly. And would you say that most small companies have a forward work plan, or they've just never sort of thought about that?
I think recently we've seen that, actually I'm pleased to say a lot of manufacturing businesses in particular over the last year have really got quite excited and quite interested in digital and automation and Industry 4. I think even though we've talked about this for 10 years, within the last year or two I think things have really changed. I think COVID is maybe part of that. And I think we should all work together to try and keep that momentum going and grow the industry.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the sort of population in manufacturing is ageing, and that is something that's going to have to be replaced by something. It's either have the young people coming into manufacturing or it's automation. And we're anecdotally we're finding that as well.
Absolutely. I think digitalisation and cobots and automation, I think collectively it covers that in two ways. As you say, it changes the image of the industry, but it also reinvigorates it really and makes it more productive and profitable. So
yes,
it's wins all round.
And with your business on Industry 4, how do you think factories of the future are going to be connected to the web? Do you think that's going to be an evolution for companies now?
Yeah, so I think for the average SME, I think the cloud in particular is a really interesting area for them because they don't need to get involved with on-premise servers and the costs associated and managing and maintaining that sort of infrastructure. With the cloud, you've got services that will do whatever you need to do very cheaply, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper by the day. And the barrier to entry in terms of skill is dropping quite quickly. I would say, however, that some larger businesses in defence and aerospace are a little bit more reluctant, but that's understandable. But a lot of the time, it does come down to what data they're wanting to send to the cloud a lot of the time. So it's very variable depending on the business.
And would you say most companies are aware of the benefits of that, or they're just completely unaware at the moment?
I think there's a big mixture. I think some businesses are starting to think about how they can use the data to understand the business better, because that's what it really comes down to. If you're not measuring and observing the way your business runs, whatever it is, and modelling it and understanding how you can make it better and taking action on it, you're really missing out on those opportunities, because a lot of businesses don't do that, but they understand the principle when you talk about it.
Yes. To be able to do anything, you've got to gather the data first to be able to analyse it.
Absolutely, yeah. Understand the business, and data is just a really great way of doing that. As long as it's easy to consume and easy to action, it's a great way of getting started to become a more efficient business.
Yeah. One question we get asked quite a lot about is artificial intelligence, and what kind of impact do you think that AI will have on manufacturing and robotics in general?
I think for robotic arms in particular, there's some really interesting work around things like reinforcement learning, where you could have a robot arm almost train itself. You could give it a task in an environment and it would actually learn how to do it itself. Not to say it needs to have that sort of capability, but those sort of things are quite an interesting avenue for things like robots. And more generally, I think AI is going to be there to support people more and more. It'll start to do more tasks that people would typically not take interest in. So data visualization, thinking about how you report data, having access to data as well. I can imagine very shortly factories where you walk into the factory, it'll tell you what utilization was yesterday, where the quality issues were, things like that. And all it's really doing is synthesizing voice. The data is somewhere else. It's just telling me what's happening, but that data exists somewhere else already today. So I think it's really just going to grease the wheels of Industry 4 and make it really more accessible.
And potentially that AI is going to be able to help you make those decisions to make products more efficiently with less waste and make those decisions for you, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's huge potential for optimization as well in manufacturing. I think we've seen discrete event simulation being used for the design of factories, but I think in future we'll find operational optimization where, based on your orders and what your requirements are, it will just change the schedule and what requirements you have in the factory to optimize it to meet those demands. And also you'll be able to model your costs very well with that type of thing. So it's a very exciting time to be in manufacturing.
Excellent. Okay, that's all for this week. Join us next week when we'll have another guest to talk about the future of robotics. Thank you for joining the Cobot channel.